So, yeah, I made this video in Spanish and I'm making it in English so that the embassy and whoever else in the English speaking world can find out what almost happened to me and my daughter here in Mexico. So, my ex, she took the daughter to the hospital. I'm not sure at what. I'm not sure at what point or if she's involved with the organ traffickers. I'm going to tell you about this. So the what's called the Instituto Nacional de Pediatría, or the National Institute for Pediatrics, is a hospital in Mexico City that takes on cases all across the country. So you can imagine a poor person from from Chiapas or somewhere comes to Mexico City with their child, really ill, really grave. The child, gets taken to the hospital, and one of two things happens. Because the children who arrive at this hospital are mostly grave; their situation's dire, and so one of two things happens: they either have surgery done and they die in the surgery, or they have the surgery done and they survive. So if they die in the surgery, we're talking about organ trafficking here, okay? And this hospital is involved in organ trafficking. That's my belief. And here's why. Well, I have the evidence of my own daughter in her case, which is being investigated right now. So we're pretty sure she was almost trafficked and she had her organs almost harvested and all this stuff. And I'll get to that in a minute. But imagine you're a father or mother or parents with the child. You get to this hospital and they tell you, okay, your child might not survive. You're uneducated. You're poor. You probably don't have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of knowledge. You don't know what your rights are. You don't know what's about to happen to your daughter or your son or whatever. And it gets taken into surgery and dies. They come out and tell you your child's dead. Da, da, da. But little do you know they really harvested your child's organs. And you'll never know because you'll sign off on a piece of paper and you'll go back to your rural town in Chiapas or wherever and continue leading your life and just write it off as a child that had a difficult future and ended up getting really sick and passing away, and all for the better maybe for everybody. That's if the child dies in surgery. Now, if the child doesn't die in surgery for some reason, imagine the same poor family, same poor father or mother or whatever. The child comes out of surgery and is like needing a lot of post-care, post-operative home care. That's very expensive and costly. Maybe, oxygen, medicines, all kinds of stuff that I had to go through. If you don't have the money for these things, the hospital tells you, oh, no, we can't give you your son back then. If you don't have the resources to take care of your child, you can't have custody of your child again. The child must stay in the custody of the state. And so then in Mexico City, the child goes to somewhere. I haven't really figured out where yet. We're investigating. But most of the times, my guess is the mortality rate of those children, once they are released from the hospital and taken into the custody of the state, I'm going to guess the mortality rate for those children is 80%. 80% mortality rate. And why? Because they're being killed and their organs are being harvested. And once again, what's the poor mother or father going to do from another state? They've already probably gone back to their state because they got to go back to their job, because if they don't, they'll lose it. Or they had to go back to the state because they just didn't have any money, and they go, well, I had a difficult child with a difficult future and lots of medical problems, and I can't take care of it. I don't have the money. Better for the state to take care of my child. At least the state can take care of my child. Oh, yeah, you're right. The state can take care of your child, all right. And they will. It's just not in the way you think. So then all of a sudden your child dies in custody of somebody else, or in custody of an orphanage, and the state gets the message to you that your child died, and it's like, oh, well, once again, I had a child that had a difficult future, lots of medical problems. I wasn't going to be able to deal with it. Look, if the state couldn't deal with it, I certainly wasn't going to be able to. And the parent writes it off as just a bad experience and continues with life and doesn't think about it. Because why? Even if they wanted to think about it, they don't have the money, They don't have the knowledge or education or time or withstand or the the endurance, basically the stamina to withstand a huge legal battle against the hospital and the government itself, you know. So uh, we're pretty sure that my ex took a down payment for my child. And this is a disgusting thing for me because this is the mother of my child, and this is a really terrible thing for me to have to come to grips with. But she probably took a down payment for my child, and that's why everybody's acting the way they are. Because if she doesn't, people, if you don't understand, if the mafia gives you money here in Mexico, and you don't comply or you don't fulfill your part of the deal, you're pretty much just finished. You can just commit suicide or something. So she accepted this money for the child, and then the child didn't die, or the child didn't, nothing happened the way it was supposed to. I took custody of the child, and now she and everybody else are like desperate to get the child back because the child has type A negative blood, which means my little girl's organs are like extra valuable, and so I'm pretty sure she took a down payment, and the evidence is there. I've given the evidence to the state. And another issue happened. It's really just unbelievable, At the time, my little girl was in the hospital, and her surgery was about to happen, and I had filed the criminal complaints against her mother for the second time. Government here, it's like a little kid. You got to repeat a word 1,000 times in order for the kid to learn it. You got to repeat a lawsuit with the Mexican government here in order for them to get it and to get moving, I guess. So the second time I filed, after the second time, the hospital was really angry with me. I couldn't figure out why. I'm just there for my little girl. But they treated me really wrong. I have it all documented. I have videos about how they mistreated me in the hospital. They tried to marginalize me. They tried to commit discrimination and racism against me. And they deprived me of the right to see my daughter while she was in intensive care. But more importantly, they deprived my daughter of the right to see her father, which is what she desperately wanted to see. That's who she wanted to see and be with the whole time. And I have that evidence too. And so does the government too. But so after all of that happened, right, I get called into the office of this one doctor who was part of the surgery of the little girl. I'm not going to name him, but if it's discovered that everything I have to say is true, boy, is he in big trouble. Or maybe, I don't know. But my question is, here's the question he asked me. So when I filed my criminal complaints, I got taken into his office because I think everybody looked at him as like the only one who could talk to me or something. And he asked me, and at this time I'm emotionally distraught. My daughter's got a tube in her mouth. She's like about to get a surgery or not, and I don't know, and everything's up in the air. And my ex is acting really crazy because she knew that I filed the complaints about her, and there's just all this stuff going on, right? But the doctor asks me, so what's it going to take? How much money do you want? I'm like, what? Hey, how, it's about money, right? He goes, you need some money. You want some money, right? How much for you to go away? And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't want money. I don't need money. I got money. I want my daughter. What the hell? Oh, okay. I see. I understand now. And I was into that conversation, and I was like, shuttled away from him and never saw him again. There's another guy who was there who was part of the legal department and the security team. And at the time, they tried to exclude me from the premises of the hospital because my ex pretended that she had been attacked by me, and she went and filed a false complaint about how I had attacked her, but it wasn't true. But I believe that one of the guys who's in the organ trafficking ring, he came and said, "Hey, look, you just need to go." Months later, when I went back to the hospital with the little girl for a follow-up appointment, because I was forced to by a court order, that guy sees me in the hallway and he turned white as a ghost. Oh! And there were some social workers from the government who were with me, and they saw this guy act like really weird. And I said, "Hey, Antonio, how's it going?" And he's like, "Oh my God, that's you." And he walked away. He had to get away from me really quick. I was like, why did he act that way? Was he screwing my ex while she was at the hospital and I just didn't know? I mean, normally if you're a guy and you act that way with another guy, it's because you're either screwing his ex or whatever behind his back or something else is going on, right? But no, it wasn't just once that we saw him. The second time we saw him on the same day in another part of the hospital in a hallway. And I said, "Hey, Antonio, don't you remember me? I'm like, why are you acting this way?" He's like, ran away again in front of the social workers from the government. I have witnesses. So at that point, I was like, why did that guy run away like that? I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I turned to the social worker. I think that guy was probably sleeping with my ex behind my back, and that's why he acted that way. But at the time, I didn't think of, oh yeah, maybe he was the guy who was part of the organ trafficking ring that was going to steal my daughter and kill her and steal her organs. And he was screwing my ex too. And he was the guy who probably gave her the money. I don't know. We're going to find out though. So my guess is that these organs that are getting trafficked from these children at this hospital, these poor children, here's the worst part. This ring of organ traffickers is related to that ring of organ traffickers that was busted about a decade ago in New Jersey and New York with the rabbis and the New Jersey mayors and the pedophilic Mossad agents and the Secret Service from South Africa and all these people who were indicted. And I think it was the bank in New York too that was the bank behind it, was receiving the payments. A couple secret banks there that they wouldn't mention in the indictment. Why are always banks kept secret in these indictments? I mean, they're the ones that are actually facilitating these crimes by accepting these illicit payments for these stolen organs. How do you think these organs are paid for? In cash? Come on. Pretty hard to do. The cash still got to be gotten out of the bank somehow. So my guess is that a good number of the organs that are harvested at that hospital go north to my country, to rich people, to rich children, to the same type or group of people, if not the same group of organ traffickers who are preying upon the general population. And it's just not right. I don't care if they're related to the Jeff Epstein case or not. I don't care if they're related to Donald Trump or not. I don't care who and any of all of you are. You're going to go to jail soon, though. So all I can say is, thanks to me, my daughter is alive. Not thanks to my government either, because they didn't help me. Because since last year they had a chance to help me and they didn't even bother to make a phone call to the Mexican government to find out what was going on. And I know that for a fact. Don't ask me how. But I'm going to tell you, I know my government didn't do jack shit for me or my little girl. Because most of the people in the embassy are Donald Trump supporters who were held over from the last term. And they don't give a shit about my little girl. And they don't give a shit about me. And the Mexican government definitely doesn't give a shit. They're so corrupt. They've got so many, I think almost, okay, so 95% of all Mexican government workers, whether it's state, federal, or whatever, they're corrupt. So when you walk into a government building and you look at 100 people, you can basically say 95 people out of that 100 are corrupt. So you got to ask yourself, which of the 5 are the ones I can work with? So when I walked into the courthouse the other day, the family court, actually, out of the 100 people that I saw, I couldn't even find 5 that I could say, maybe they're not corrupt. I couldn't find a single one. And in fact, the judge in the case committed another corruption after I had already mentioned it. And they acted like, when I mentioned corruption in the courtroom, they all acted like they're going to break out in hives because they're allergic to even just hearing that word mentioned somehow. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be a major change come. And a lot of the people who hold government positions in Mexico and the United States in very short period of time will no longer be in their positions of power. Maybe not a single one. History has a way of repeating itself, and we're about to see it repeat itself again in a very bad way. And that's kind of why I'm trying to just do my thing and be with my daughter and keep my head down. I don't want to be in the United States when it gets attacked by another country and half the people die. That's not for me. If that's for you, then stay in the United States, I guess. But if I do go back to the United States with my daughter, I'm going to definitely be moving to a certain part where I think war won't happen. El Richard Bamberger Alavizos reporting to you from my hideout in Mexico City about organ trafficking and corruption in Mexico.